record now. Yeah. Welcome to Expert Views on ADR Ever, a podcast about simplifying ADR, the traditional African method of settling disputes, or the appropriate dispute resolution ADR, in a bid to attract more users to settle their disputes or conflicts with mediation, ombuds, arbitration, collaborative law, restorative justice, early dispute resolution, negotiation, conciliation, and of course, early neutral evaluation. My name is DrChinweEgbunike, the Marketing Liaison on the 2024 American Bar Association Dispute Resolution and the host of Expert Views on ADR Ever video podcast show. I'm delighted to welcome Kenneth Cloke to the Ever show. He is the director of the Center for Dispute Resolution. Prof is a mediator, arbitrator, consultant, and trainer specializing in communication, negotiation, and resolving complex multi-party conflict. He has mediated conflicts and taught dispute resolution in over 20 countries. He's currently an adjunct professor at Pepperdine University School of Law, Harvard University School of Law, and Amsterdam University Institute on dispute resolution. He is an internationally recognized speaker and has authored several books. His new book, The Magic in Mediation, which we will be discussing soon, can be found on Amazon. If he has many hats, I've left the link to his profile. So, Prof, I will quickly go through my thoughts on the book because we have like just 30 minutes plus five minutes to spend on discussing your work. So it was an absolute honor to read your book, The Magic in Mediation, and to have the opportunity to discuss it with you. The book opened my mind to the intricate interconnections between mediation, metaphor, meditation, mindfulness, mathematics, physics, decolonization, indigenous methods, and restorative practices. It also provided me with valuable insights into the art of asking questions externally and internally. Literature, arts, poetry in conflict resolution, how to cultivate magic in mediation, designing it, facilitating large groups, economic conflicts, war in Ukraine, and mediating death, dying, trauma, and renewal. You had a close brush with that. I'm so sorry to that part. That is chapter 14. It was really scary to read, but I'm glad you're okay now. So what struck me most about your book was its ability to inspire creativity and outside the box thinking. Some keywords such as partiality, physics, and of course magic. The Magic in Mediation is a book I've been waiting for. It has the power to inspire someone who is not a mediator to become one, and potential users to embrace ADR, particularly mediation. It also taught me a powerful lesson that mediation is not just a tool for conflict resolution, but a means of empathy building and world changing. Your book has left an indelible mark on the field of ADR, and I have no doubt that it will continue to inspire this generation and generations to come. My language will say, Ise, that is a name. So the book is concise, to the point, and excellently written. So thank you for being such a brilliant and generous teacher and for impacting your wisdom to junior scholars like myself. Your commitment to collaborating with diverse communities through online platforms and publications is a testament to your genius and enduring legacy. Thank you so very much, Prof. So stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Chinwe. Thank you very much for your kind comments.
You're welcome. So let me stop sharing my slides. So yeah, without further ado, the first question is, what motivated you to write this book, and why the name The Magic in Mediation? Thank you.
I have been a mediator now this is my 43rd year resolving conflicts between people. So every day for the last 40 years, practically, most of those days, I
Yeah.
have spent working with people who disagree with each other, who dislike each other, who don't trust each other, who hate each other. And what inspired me to write the book was essentially this. Here are my personal statistics.
Yeah.
I have mediated thousands of disputes,
Yeah.
thousands and thousands of them. 100% of the people who come to see me are totally and completely stuck, and they have no idea what to do to get unstuck.
Mm-hmm.
Out of that 100%, about 95 to 98% end up resolving their disputes. And out of that 95 to 98%, another 95 to 98% have no trouble enforcing their agreements, in spite of the fact that no one is being a judge or a police officer or someone who's standing over them and telling them they have to do this.
Yeah.
They've chosen to do it, and they uphold their agreements. How do we explain this incredible shift from 100% being stuck to nearly 100% getting unstuck? What happens? And what happens is a kind of magic. So what is this magic? And I think we can see it on several levels. There's a very simple magic. I think of it as kind of everyday magic.
Yeah.
So the first level of magic is that you have brought a third party into your conversation. And the third party is someone who is outside the conflict. And because they're outside the conflict, they're able to have some perspective on it. And the people who are in the conflict have lost their sense of perspective. So the question that I ask myself is, where exactly is the mediator located in relation to the conflict? And the answer is at least in 3 locations. One, inside the conflict, because unless you go inside it, you won't understand what happened. You won't understand how people feel. And being inside the conflict means, on a certain level, going inside the minds and hearts and feelings of the people who are in the conflict, both of them at the same time. And secondly, if you're just inside the conflict, you'll be as stuck as they are. So you also simultaneously have to be outside the conflict so you can look back at it as though from the outside. So being inside the conflict means developing a deep level of empathy with both people at the same time. That doesn't mean agreeing with everything that they're saying. It means understanding what it might be like to be them and to feel as stuck as they feel, to feel as pained, as angry, as frightened, as untrusting as they feel. And then being outside of it means being able to look at it honestly and critically and see what it is that they're doing that is getting in their own way. How, in a phrase, they're shooting themselves in their own foot. And how do they do this? By insulting the other person in a way that makes the other person defensive and unable to hear what they're saying. So the first level of magic is really simple. It's just joining the conflict and bringing honesty and empathy to the conversation. The third place that the mediator has to be is around the conflict. That is, understanding the environment, the systems that are promoting the conflict, and doing our best to see what we can do to shift those systems. So for example, you can have a conflict between two children over who gets what piece of cake or cookie that's or some food that's available to them that they like very much. And you can solve that problem, but you won't end the conflicts between those two children because they're competing with one another. And so you have to solve the problem of competition in order to end the conflict completely. That's a system. It's a family system. And so we have to be sensitive to family systems, social systems, political systems, economic systems, organizational systems, belief systems, all kinds of systems. And that's the third location that the mediator has to be in. But by being in those three locations, we can be somewhere where the people who are in conflict are not. They aren't focused on that. They're focused on what the other person just said to them, how hurt they feel, how nobody is listening to them, how they're not being respected. They're not being given the dignity even of having an independent perspective. And we can see this right now in Gaza, in the war that is taking place there, where neither side is listening to the other in terms of what it is that they're saying. And they become so frustrated with that lack of listening that they're willing to kill each other. And not only kill each other, but to kill each other's children who had nothing to do with this conflict. And so that's one level of magic. There's a second level of magic, and it comes from this. If we ask the question, what gets us into conflict? We can come up with many different answers, but here's one of them. A lack of skill at being able to handle someone else's behavior. So one form of magic is to improve our level of skill at being able to handle someone else's behavior. What are those skills? Well, I think of these as crossroads, and I wrote a book called The Crossroads of Conflict. And what it says is that every conflict takes place at a crossroads that's defined on the one hand by a problem you are now required to solve, and on the other hand, by the fact that you do not yet have the skills you need in order to solve it. So a form of magic is building your skills. What does that crossroads consist of? Here's the first one. Someone has just behaved badly towards me. Am I going to behave badly towards them? Or am I going to stop and try to figure out what's going on here and see if I can't move us into a successful, effective, useful, problem-solving conversation? That's a crossroads. But we can't do it because we don't have the skill of being able to step back from the conflict and look at it while we are in the midst of it. And this is pretty much hardwired in our brains. So it takes a third person sometimes to come in and say, no, calm down, relax. Let's just sit down together and talk with one another. And let's start trying to figure out what happened and what we can do to solve it. That's a kind of magic. And what makes it magic is that the people who are in the conflict can't imagine it. They can't even figure out where that came from. So I wrote the book in order to try to figure out what exactly is this magic? What can we do that can help people develop those skills? And not only those skills, but many more. That's just the first crossroads that we face, is the one of whether we're going to behave badly also, or whether we're going to try to do something constructive. And now there are more. Can I actually listen to what the other person said without becoming defensive?
Exactly.
How do I do that? Can I say some things that will undercut their defensiveness, that will make them less reactive, less angry, less frightened. What can I say that would do that? But I have to be honest in saying it. So it's not about making something up and pretending. It's about honestly getting to a place where we recognize that everyone in conflict is scared and everyone's angry and everyone is feeling pain and loss and grief, and has experienced some trauma. Conflict is a trauma.
Yeah.
And so we have to treat it in a way like we treat any other trauma. We have to take care of the person who's experiencing it. And that doesn't mean agreeing with them, because what they're saying that they want us to agree with, that's just the voice of the conflict. They want us to say the other person is someone who's bad, they're evil, they're rotten. But what we can say is the way they have behaved has not been successful in helping you figure out how to get out of this conflict. So that's a kind of magic. Here's an example.
Yeah.
Someone says to another person, they've got two people, one says, "You are a liar." What can the other person say? Well, they can say, "No, I'm not," in which case we know they're lying anyway. They can say, "Well, you're a worse liar," which is making it worse.
Yeah.
They could also say something completely different. And here's where a piece of skill comes in. Here's what they could say.
Yeah.
What truth do you know that is not included in what I just said? Isn't that what "you're a liar" means? It means you just said something that doesn't make sense to me because it doesn't include what happened to me. And so you are lying about what happened. And of course, the difficulty is that every conflict story is like, it's a little bit like fiction, like a novel, like a short story. It's a lie in search of a deeper truth. So you're telling a story, not because you think the story is true factually, but because it's true emotionally. That's what the story means.
Yeah.
It's what's true to you emotionally. It's how it feels to experience what you have experienced. So now the mediator can ask each person to tell their stories, and then we can figure out how to retell those stories in a way that doesn't require someone to be the evil one, the ogre, the wicked witch, whatever it may happen to be.
Yeah.
So that's why I wrote the book in a way.
Yeah.
And then also to search for the different manifestations of conflict that we don't really think about.
Yeah.
If we ask the question, when did the first conflict occur?
Yeah.
And the answer is at the time of the Big Bang, when the universe came into existence.
Yeah.
Because when it came into existence, what were created were positive particles and negative particles. What were also created were neutral particles. And what was created was space, meaning up and down and everything in between. And time, meaning the future and the past and everything in between.
Yeah.
So the focus of conflict resolution is on everything in between.
Yes.
And now the question is, how do we get there? And that's where the skill comes in. So that's another reason why I wrote the book. So it has a lot about physics and literature and math and economics and politics, different ways of thinking about it.
Oh, thank you so very much, Prof. I wanted to ask about the mediator. I think you mentioned in page 40, you raised an intriguing point that mediators should not be neutral. Did I get that correctly?
Yes, yes.
Yes. And the general rule in mediation is that mediators are meant to are third neutral parties. So can you please clarify this?
Yes, thank you very much. I have a substitute phrase for it. What
Yes.
neutral means to me is not caring. And when I'm at my best as a mediator is when I care deeply about both people without siding with either of them exclusively. And therefore, I call this omnipartiality, meaning I'm partial to both. I side with both of them against the conflict. And that means, once again, not necessarily that I agree with what they're saying. That doesn't matter. What matters is that they feel heard. And so the basic idea of conflict resolution is to shift from what is called a win-lose outcome process to a win-win outcome process. Everybody deserves to win, and nobody needs to lose. And the question is, can we create a problem-solving process that allows us to do that? And that's what mediation is. It is a way of trying to shift from somebody winning and another person losing, which is what happens if you go to court, and it's what happens if you are in war or in violence, to a situation in which it is possible for both sides to win. Here's the way to think about it. What would happen if you had a war in your family? It would destroy the family. What would happen if you went to court over every family dispute? It would destroy the family. What keeps the family alive? The fact that everybody in the family gets something they need from the family. Maybe they get love, maybe they get support, maybe they get food and clothing, whatever it is that they get from the family. It's something that allows them to unite, not in spite of, but in celebration of their differences. So mediation is a process of linking diversity and unity. We are united with one another based on our differences, and each person who's different is a gift to us because we now can find them inside of us by using empathy and compassion, by listening, by discovering that it is possible for us to be a larger person than we were before, just by discovering that there's another way of being in the world. And that's what makes a family better than larger than the sum of its parts.
Okay, thank you so very much, Prof.
Sure.
So let me quickly get to chapter 4. So chapter 4, you reviewed the act of asking questions. So what I came across questions on bullying were raised. So the question is, can we mediate bullying, Prof?
How to mediate?
Can we mediate bullying?
Yes. So
Thank you.
asking questions is one of the most profound skills in conflict resolution. Let me give just a couple of examples.
Okay.
These can be used, I'll give some examples, for example, in political situations. What would you ask someone who you disagree with politically? Here are a couple of questions. One, what life experiences have you had that have led you to feel so passionately about that issue? Why do you feel so strongly about it? And couldn't you ask the same question to your spouse? Why do you feel so strongly about that? Why do you care so much about this issue? What does it mean to you? And you can ask the same question of anybody, and the question is inherently respectful and allows someone to feel, oh, this is someone who wants to know what I really think, as opposed to what I'm just saying because we're having an argument. When it comes to issues, for example, of prejudice and stereotyping and discrimination, One of the things that that I found very useful is to ask each person, for example, have you ever in your life felt stereotyped by someone? Have you ever felt not seen for who you actually were,
Yeah.
but judged based on your appearance or what, something superficial, but judged falsely, someone who had a wrong idea of who you were? How did that feel to you? And guess what? Everybody feels the same.
Mm.
And now imagine that happening every day
Yeah.
for 30 or 40 years.
Yeah.
And so you can see that the power of questions. Here's one of my favorite ones. And I came up with this. I came up with recently 50 questions to ask in Israeli-Palestinian conflicts. And here are the first 3 questions.
Yeah.
Question 1 is roughly, I don't know that I'm giving it exactly, but it's on the web if people want to find it.
Yes.
On LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
on Facebook. And here's the first question. What values does your group believe in strongly? What are your values that you really adhere to, whether you're Israeli or Palestinian or whatever? 2, why are those values so important to you? What do they mean to you? Why are they values? And 3, how could we use those values in this conversation we're having right now to help us learn from each other? And now we're talking differently. And how many questions are there like that? Well, I wrote up 50 for the Israeli-Palestinian dialogue, but there are an infinite number of
Yeah.
those questions.
Okay.
And those are the kinds of questions we want to ask. Ones that really stop people in their tracks and make them think. Questions that take their breath away.
Oh, thank you so very much, Prof. So, because I'm looking at the time, but I think we've got 5 more minutes to go. So, can you sort of summarize the interconnectedness with mediation, physics, and mathematics?
Ah, how lovely. Thank you for asking that question. I don't think, I assumed when I wrote this that almost nobody would be interested in these questions.
That's
But they're
thinking out of the box. Yeah.
So there are 2 chapters in the book. One is called The Metaphor
Yeah.
of Mathematics, and second is The Metaphor of Physics. So in mathematics, we can think of math as levels of abstraction that are about the relationships between different things, and trying to find out what makes them the same. So what is the number 6? Well, it's the number 2 multiplied times 3.
Yeah.
It's the number 2 added to the number 2 added to the number 2. It is the number 1 added to number 5, etc. So we can think of many, many different ways of coming up with 6. All of them are equal. And there is within mathematics an idea which is that all of those ways of coming up with the number 6 help to describe a kind of group. And the number 6 belongs to a group of objects that have the same number of ways of reaching it. And these are called symmetry groups. So if you take, for example, a square and you rotate it 20 degrees, it doesn't look the same. But if you rotate it 90 degrees, it looks exactly the same. So we can say that the square is symmetrical under 90 degrees of rotation.
Yeah.
And now we can ask the question, In what ways are conflicts symmetrical? And the first way is, well, if you just switch sides, the conflict remains the same. If you have, for example, a mother and a daughter having an argument, and you switch roles and the daughter pretended she was the mother and the mother pretended she was the daughter, the conflict would look exactly the same. And there's a second part, and this part kind of has to do with physics, but I'll use this as an example. In politics or in conflict, we talk about people who are poles apart.
Yeah.
Well, if we look at the Earth, we can say that there is a magnetic pole in the Earth as a whole.
Yeah.
And there's a North Pole and a South Pole. And those poles are divided just as they are in magnetics. You have a magnet and you sort of look at the patterns of how it impacts the iron filings around it or whatever, you'll see that there's a North Pole and a South Pole, but if you cut the magnet in half, there's still a North Pole and a South Pole.
Yeah.
And that keeps on going as long as there's magnetism. So where does the magnetism allow the two to be joined? And the answer is in two places. One is at the equator, where North and South Pole cancel each other out and basically are in an amount of zero. And the second is along the pole itself, which is a line in conflict that represents the things that people care about. So what separates people in conflict? Something that they have in common that they both care about.
Yeah.
Well, now that's interesting. And that now allows us to ask a question about why do you care about this, and discover that the other person also cares about it, maybe for the same or for some different reason. But they both care about the same thing or there wouldn't be a conflict.
Exactly.
In Israel and Palestine, it's about the land. They both care about the land. They both care about their children. They both care about not being attacked by the other side. And now the more of those we accumulate, the better we get at trying to figure out where we go.
Oh, thank you so very much. Oh, thank you so very much, Prof. I was just looking at the time, but I mean, I just have to round up. I completely agree with you. The book is a must read for everybody, not even for people that are not in dispute resolution field, but everybody that honestly that wants to see that their day-to-day life is not obstructed by conflict, because conflict is an everyday thing for human beings. So I would definitely recommend this book to everyone. Thank you so very much, Prof. You're a genius. There's no other word to describe you. Thank you for your insights, perspectives on this your book. I appreciate you coming on the show as well. Thank you so very much, Prof. Yeah.
Thank you, Chinwe, and I wish you very great success with your book as well.
Thank you, Prof. All right, cheers. Do have a lovely day. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.